People with a religious background, what made you stop believing? I was sitting in history class laughing at how stupid people willingly believed in all those Greek gods. And then it hit me. Well, at least the Greeks acknowledged that their gods were petty and temperamental. And overall, they had much cooler gods. Dionysus and Aphrodite knew how to throw a good party. When I realized that the devout spend their time not being good people, but judging others, I mentioned to my grandmother that I'm not against same-sex marriages and abortions, and she threw a fit. Except I really work hard for the good of our society, and she sits around all day judging people like she's paid to do it. As a bi, it pisses me off. If it doesn't concern you, why does it upset you so much? Okay, you're religious, you don't have much choice, I get it. But how can you forbid me something because of your religion? It's ridiculous. My grandmother once told me that I shouldn't become a nurse because I don't value life. Just because I mentioned once that a woman should have the choice to have an abortion. Okay, Granny. Before, my mom loved me with all her heart, and I tried not to disappoint her, but then, at one point, she turned to religion. From that moment, everything that was previously considered completely normal, listening to music, hanging out with girls, school parties, suddenly became strictly forbidden. It was so difficult for me to adapt to her crappy rules and cultural shock that she practically disowned me. I'm 28 now, and the last 17 years of my life have been unbearable. I recently found the courage to erase her from my life because I got tired of not being able to make my mother proud of her son. Mentally, I have already buried her. I lost her many years ago. Something similar happened to me when my mom fell into serious depression. Instead of seeking help, she immersed herself in religion and used it to justify her inhumane behavior. She cut ties with everyone, including me. I haven't seen my mom in 20 years. I saw the dark side of religion, and it left a huge mark on me. For a year, I prayed every day and asked God to give me strength not to lose faith, but eventually I stopped praying and believing. Since then, I have been happier than ever. After I rejected religion, a whole world opened up to me, a world that I love and value. And I love all good people, regardless of their religious beliefs. Years of unanswered prayers and silence, constant increase of evil at the expense of good and righteous people. Changed. If God exists, he will have to beg me for mercy. Phrase scratched out by a Jewish prisoner during World War II. I never understood this. If God exists, why does he bring people to such suffering? Yes, this thought completely changed me. My biological father tormented me, my mom, and even our dog for years. He was cruel to us, even in public. I remember once looking at my mom and asking, should we seek help from the neighbors? The result, the neighbors slammed the door in our faces, and my mom's parents and the Catholic Church said that she should forgive him and try to find common ground. They said it was her choice, and she'd have to make things right. The church wasn't going to annul the marriage either. Moreover, our aunt came to us and started telling my mom that it was just male nature, and that God made men so passionate that they find it hard to control themselves, and we, women, are supposed to endure. At a young age, I realized that I couldn't believe in a religion that defends ruthless men. I lost faith as quickly as my innocence, my logical thinking brain. As much as I want to believe, it's just not true. There are too many huge gaps and inconsistencies in all existing and ancient religions. Yeah, and why is the Bible supposed to be taken literally, when it's written so poetically? The world clearly wasn't created in 7 days. The galaxy and the sun didn't appear after light, and the earth. All the animals in the world wouldn't fit in the ark. Where did the remains of dinosaurs come from? Why is the truth exactly in this religion? Why does every corner of the planet have its own religion? I grew up in a very poor family. My mom was a devout Catholic, and despite living in poverty, she gave all the money to the church. I never understood why God needed us to give everything to the church and stay poor if he loves us all so much. My relatives are the same. We didn't have money for food or decent clothes, but they still went to church and paid tithes. And don't even get me started on all the money they poured into our private church school. My parents are just being used. They chose to be poor. They still live barely making ends meet, because 10% belongs to God. I hate this nonsense. I grew up in a Protestant church. They tried to make me believe in all sorts of conspiracy theories, like that Rihanna and Lady Gaga are Illuminati. In addition, they said that people are unequal, and we should stick to traditional values. That is, marriage should only be between a man and a woman, and you must have children. Otherwise, you're worthless. Once I experienced sleep paralysis, and at the next Sunday service, I decided to ask my teacher what it was. He replied that it was a demon sent by Satan. And I won't even mention all the racist, homophobic, and sexist remarks I heard from another teacher. That life is over. Now I'm an agnostic. One moment I realized that all peoples have always had religions. You can go to the edge of the world, find the most isolated and untouched society there, and even they will have their own gods, whom they worship. There are thousands of religions, and there is no substantial reason to think that any of them is special. Why don't you believe in God? This is a trick question. How to choose one out of thousands? For any non-religious person, the answer is painfully simple. Exactly. Once you understand that people choose religion with the same logic they choose sports teams, place of residence, family traditions, peer pressure, it becomes extremely clear that these religions have no internal value. As Richard Dawkins said, "We are all atheists towards most of the gods that ever were. Some of us just go one god further." When all of this is impressed upon you, you don't fully comprehend the absurdity of it all. But when you look at religion from an outsider's perspective, you don't understand how you could have ever believed in it in the first place. I was born and raised among Jehovah's Witnesses. 4 years ago, when I turned 20, I left them. Hypocrisy, lies, and intimidation. That's what these people live on. I hate them. And I don't like that tiny moment when you have to spend every second of your time on preaching and studying, neglecting dreams, goals, and aspirations. In my youth, I had a friend who left the Jehovah's Witness household at 16 and moved to live at a boarding school. So I've heard all kinds of stories. It's awful. I couldn't come to terms with the fact that 1. God controls everything. 2. God loves everyone unconditionally. 3. God allows the suffering of people whom he loves. I grew up in a Methodist family. I was taught that any believer can be saved and accepted into heaven, even if he is a rapist and murderer. But if you are a non-believer, then it doesn't matter how good you are. You are destined to burn in hell forever. That was the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Even if it is true, why should I serve such a selfish God? A God who cares more about your faith than your actions. Perhaps I'd rather choose eternal agony. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a funeral. The pastor lectured about how it's great, of course, to be a good person, but that's not enough to get into heaven. At the very least, you have to be baptized and believe in God. And it doesn't matter that there were billions of unbaptized people in the world who knew nothing about God. So they all burn in hell? But that makes no sense. And in other religions too. What if I was born a Buddhist and followed Buddhism all my life? Sorry, you chose the wrong religion. The right religion was X. Thank you for playing. Damn. I really hope that we will soon find life on other planets and put an end to these religions. Of course, we'll have to endure a few more decades as the faithful lose their faith. But in the long run, it will only make us better. You underestimate the ability of religion to twist and distort what is written. They will say that God created aliens too. Why not? Yeah, something like this already happened when America was discovered. Many began to question, the Bible didn't mention anything like that. Perhaps it is not the source of all truth. But the Christians insisted. A few months after my stepsister died of cancer at the age of 24, my daughter was diagnosed with brain cancer. It's hard to believe when awful people rule everything and good people suffer. My daughter is still in the hospital. Overall, she will have to stay in for half a year. I came to the same conclusion when my 4-year-old daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. She's doing well now. If I had any doubts about God before, at that moment I definitely understood that there is no God. What's interesting is that after that, my mother-in-law came to the same conclusion as me, while my father-in-law, on the contrary, went a different path and delved even deeper into religion. I was tried to be made into a Christian, but then I read the Bible and realized that in reality, no one actually follows it. After that, I got into history and understood that people were just creating hellish chaos, covering their shitty actions with religion. In one beautiful moment, I realized that the only reason I live for God is to avoid going to hell. Then I understood that I am a hostage, living a life against my will, a life that I did not choose and did not want. I began to seek answers and quickly found them. Now, I feel a sense of relief that there is no guy in the sky with a gun telling me, "Love me, or it will be worse." Almost 3 years ago, my dad died in a car accident. We still do not know what caused it because only one car was involved in the accident. Maybe he fell asleep at the wheel, or maybe he did it on purpose. When it all happened, I went to confess, hoping that the priest would help me find peace. But the priest said that if my dad crashed deliberately, then it was a mortal sin, and accordingly, he was probably already in hell. Those words made me cry so hard, I was torn apart. After that, my faith began to fade. Wow, I'm sorry you had to go through that. When I was a first-year student, our beloved dog suddenly went blind. Despite this, over time, he learned to move around our house and backyard. One beautiful morning, a day after I returned home after taking exams, my dad, as usual, let the dog out into the yard. But something terrible happened. Our fluffy friend, scared of something, suddenly ran and presumably crashed into a tree. The result, a serious spinal injury, paralysis. We started thinking about our options. That day, my parents had to go to a charity event, so the dog stayed with me. He couldn't move. He couldn't see anything. He couldn't control any bodily functions. Every hour, he needed to be turned over. The only thing he could do was hear. And, as luck would have it, there was a thunderstorm outside all evening. Our buddy was always very afraid of thunderstorms, but that day especially. It was so painful for me to see how our once proud, athletic, and confident dog spent his last day whimpering in fear. Maybe there is no direct connection to God here, but at that moment, I felt uneasy. The loss of my dog became a catalyst for the decline of my faith. I tried to reevaluate everything afterwards, but this event was a turning point for me. Thank you for watching. In the comments, people with a religious background tell us, what made you stop believing? And don't forget to check out our other episodes. Bye.